Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and it's time to return to some Warlord Games epic battles. Hail Caesar.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
Way back when Warlord Games released the epic Hail Caesar range with the big Hannibal set and all the other things that came with it, I showed off a few of the miniatures, covered it, I spoke about the rule book, and I did a painting tutorial for the Gallic Celts as well, and I'll be revisiting that slightly in this video today with a bit of an updated or an alternative way of painting some of those miniatures. They very kindly sent me a set of the new Celt Army, which is an expansion on that, and it's packed full of plastic miniatures and one-off resin little miniature as well. So I thought we'll take a look at what's in the set, and then I'm going to do some painting as well to give you a bit of an idea how you may go about painting some of those Gallic Celts. So way back when the original set was released, my favourite miniatures in the whole thing was the small sprue of Gallic Celts. I just really like the look of them. It's a new period for me anyway, so I am going to get pronunciations and things wrong. I'm going to say that right up front. But let's take a look at what you get in this set. So aside from the A5 full colour little booklet that you get enough to make 18 Gallic Celt warriors, 18 bases of, 6 bases of Geisate, 6 Gallic Celt chariots, 6 bases of light cavalry, 6 bases of medium cavalry, 2 bases of Gallic Celt skirmishes, 6 with javelins, 6 more with bows, 3 Gallic Celt commanders, and some Gallic Celt standard bearers, and then the female Celt chieftain as well, which is made of Warlord resin. Let's take a little look in the box, and we've got the little pamphlet. It is just a pamphlet really. You've got a little bit of background history, a little bit of information around the armies, you've got some stats, you've got some scenarios, and it's really a little addendum to the same part of the main rulebook where you've got all of the stats, the background and those scenarios. But it's really cool, and it obviously focuses on the Gallic Celts in the box. Obviously you've got your bases and you've got the original frames which we've already seen in that main starter set, and then you've got the new frames which is the expanded Gallic Celt range, and these are pretty cool. You've also got the one-off resin female Gallic Celt leader as well. She's pretty cool, very tiny, so she looks quite blurred when I'm all zoomed in here, but she should be pretty easy to paint up, and a nice little addition. So this was the original frame when you've got some Gallic Celt warband, essentially some warriors, a couple of standard bearers and some mounted commanders, and a few of the skirmishers as well. And then a new frame expands on that completely. You've got more Gallic Celt warriors, but you've also got then the Geisate, the ones with their bums out, essentially. You've got the Gallic medium Celtic cavalry. You've got more skirmishers, and of course you've got those chariots as well. And they're really nice miniatures. As I've mentioned already, it is not my area of expertise historically, so I'm not going to be picking out things here and saying, well, that doesn't look right or this doesn't look right. This range has been so well received so far. I think they're pretty good, and also we don't know an awful lot in super detail about certain things around the warfare in this period, so I think anything that one person said isn't right, another person will say they're not really worried about at all. But I think the miniatures are great. It's a lovely frame packed full of loads of different things. Now, I've already done a painting tutorial for the Celtic Warriors. I'm going to do something again in this video just to show you how well they painted up. And these are the guys with the bums out this time, and I've primed them black. And in my original painting tutorial, I used 3 layers of flesh with the airbrush. But this time I'm just going to base with a zenithal, go back to the way I've painted a lot of the epic miniatures in the past. And if you don't use an airbrush, I would recommend grey and then a really good dry brush of white all over the top. If not, just prime with white, and then you can copy the rest of what I'm doing here. And I wanted to offer something as an alternative to all the airbrushing that was in that previous tutorial. So these are contrast paints, Guilliman Flesh, Shyish Purple and Vulpus Pink, and if you follow all my 28mm tutorials in different game systems, you may have seen these. If you only watch my epic tutorials, you may not have come across these. And this is a really nice method for creating a really varied sort of flesh tone that's super easy and super quick. So we're using all of that detail that's on the miniature. We've already got a bit of shadow built in because I've gone zenithal. If you're just going straight white, you might not have that quite as much. And the trick here with the flesh is to apply enough so it runs into the recesses, but that you don't get too much pooling on the flat surfaces. But this is trying to do it quickly. This is trying to show how you can paint up these strips and these stands relatively quickly, because you've got so much to paint for these armies. So I'm not going to be highlighting any of the skin. I'm not going to be highlighting any of the hair, any of the wooden or brown areas on here. I'm going to be focusing on a really quick method for the skin, and then a really sort of striking way of making the shield stand out, which is where your eyes will be drawn. So it's very much quick army painting, speed painting here. I've got the Vulpes pink and the shyish purple on the wet palette. I'm just letting the water sort of soak into them a little bit to thin them slightly. Now the purple is a cooler colour, and I'm going around into the deep shadows just with the tip of my brush. Not being too worried if it bleeds out a little bit. So in between the cracks, as you can imagine, and then around the sides where the skin meets the backs of the shields, that kind of thing. It just blends into the skin a little bit, adds a little bit of shadow and depth, and it's amazing what a tonal change that makes to what is a flat skin otherwise. Doesn't matter if it goes a little bit onto the flatter areas, but you just try and keep it in those recesses a little bit more, and you can do as much as you want here. You could paint it in the backs of all the knees, all the shoulder blades, all of those kind of things if you really want to, but you don't have to. When we move on to the Vulpes pink, I've added a little bit of water again, just a touch on the end of my brush to really thin it out. And I'm glazing here, and I'm placing it in patches, so generally over the faces, focusing to the bottom half, not so much on the foreheads, and then little patches maybe on their chest, across their hands, across their knees. And you get a bit of variation then between the darker purples, which is a colder colour, the main body of that flesh skin area, and then the red areas as well on top, which just adds a little bit of warmth and that variation and makes it look more realistic. And it's super, super easy. I hope it doesn't feel like too many colours when you're thinking, oh, if it's just speed paint, why aren't we just covering it in just the flesh colour and leaving it at that? That's not a wrong way of looking at it. But then this is also super, super easy. Just to add a little bit of variation. Requires no real skill. I'm just slapping it on with a brush here. There's no highlighting going on here at all. And it just has a really, really nice effect afterwards. Adds that little bit of variation you're not going to get from a single colour, but it doesn't add an awful lot more time either. So we have Nazdrag yellow, Griffhound orange, Black Legion, Apothecary white here. This is for the hair. You could pick any colours you want, really. You could paint them in with regular colours, but because we're based here with white essentially over that zenithal, I'm just using these colours because I know they'll look striking. I'm starting at one end, flicking around and make sure I've painted all of the hair on the same colour. It's very easy with these strips to kind of go down, do the front side and then flip it over, and then you end up with different colour hair at the back than you have on the front, so something to be careful with there. Trying to keep lighter colours here. I prefer the striking kind of bright oranges and yellows, the odd with white hair, and then just one or two with the sort of the darker colour. I'm just working my way along, making sure it doesn't pull too much. I can always go back with a slightly cleaner brush if it pulls and wipe it away. But I'm not going to highlight these either on this strip. I'm really trying a method of how quickly can I paint the skin and the hair and focus on the fronts of those shields to make it pop and stand out. Now this is Cygor Brown, another contrast paint. This is a bit like going back to black, if any of you are familiar with that in terms of painting technique, is where usually when you prime in black and you paint an area and then you want to just tidy up anywhere that you've got paint that you don't need it. So I'm using it in a similar kind of way here, but I'm covering anything now that's not already been painted. So all the skin and all the hair is done. Anything else, so the shields, the backs of the shields, the spear shafts, the weapons themselves, anything else I'm covering in this brown colour because it neatens it all up, tidies it all up, and then it's ready for those other colours to go on top afterwards. And this is the last sort of contrast stage of this process. So I'm trying to be a little bit careful here now because I don't want to get it onto the skin that I've finished. A few of them have little leather sort of belts or straps. You've got to have somewhere to keep your loose change, I suppose, if you're not wearing any clothes. You've got the backs of the shields as well, and it just starts to tidy it up already. I'm also using it on the bases in between their feet as well. I'm going to apply an all-in-one basing mix to this, but having a dark base to work from means that if there's any little gaps in that, it's not going to show through white, which will look a bit ugly. So this is Witching Hour Blue and Leviathan Blue from the Two Thin Coats range, and I'm going to be using Two Thin Coats for all of the shield colours now. And essentially what I'm doing is picking a mid-tone and a highlight, so 2 colours for each shield colour that I'm using, and then I'm working my way down with the first layer and then a really simple highlight, and these are quite bright and vibrant now because I'm not using the contrast paints. You've got a nice sort of dark brown to go over the top of, leaving a little bit around the edges, making sure I keep the edges neat as well. I'm not going to go and paint them in as metallic. I'll paint the weapons in, I'll paint the bosses on the shields, but that will be it, and then we will be done. And as you can see, as I just add that really basic line highlight, but a fairly thick one. And you could leave that if you want to keep it simple. You could just paint the shields in as a flat colour, but I think it just adds that little extra element and draws your eye to the colours on the shields, which is the striking thing. When you've got hundreds of these all lined up on the table, that's the look you're going to be going for. This is Sanguine Scarlet and Demon Red, also from Two Thin Coats, and I'm going to do the same thing as I just did with the blue there essentially. So the mid-tone is going to be the base layer and then a highlight afterwards. If you're a Citadel user and you go to the Transatlantic Games website, they have a brilliant conversion chart for the Two Thin Coats paints, and you can find each of the Citadel colours, but it doesn't really matter. You can use model colour, you can use AK, it really doesn't matter here. Just pick your favourite colours and 2 that work well together. So for a base tone or a mid or a base, and then a simple highlight to go on top of it. It doesn't really matter what colours you choose here. It's all about looking at the technique, and that's what I'm trying to sort of pass off here. The same with the skin as well. You could use the Vallejo Express colour ranges, you could use the speed paint skins and all of those things from Army Painter as well. It would all work. There'll be alternatives that work. It's more about getting across a method and a way that you can paint these miniatures and get them on the table quicker. And we just keep moving on. So this is Emerald Green and Ethereal Green, again from those Two Thin Coats ranges. And that's the speed element. That's really why I'm revisiting this painting tutorial. I could have just painted something else in the box, and maybe I should have or could have painted a chariot, and that's probably something I'd like to return to, so look out for that as an upcoming tutorial in the next sort of weeks or month or so. That'll be a fun thing to do. But I knew when I painted that original tutorial I was using the airbrush quite heavily for those multiple skin layers, and I got lots of great feedback from it. People liked it, but there are also people that said, I just like your old Zenithal way, and how would you do it like that? And people are asking me what colours I'd use. So when I was sent this set, I just thought, right, let's go back to basics and show the way I've been painting all of these epics right back since the American Civil War days, working on that Zenithal. And I know a lot of people have been following that technique and just showing an alternative way. And I'll compare them both at the end. They look very similar, so there's not much in it. It's just a preference really, down to what sort of styles you want to paint with. A bit of yellow now. This is Skulker Yellow and Yellow Flame, and again I refer you to those conversion charts if you want to convert it to Citadel. If you use other paints, just choose your favourite ranges really. It's just nice to add lots of colours, and if you want to know what kind of colours, just use the box art, use the studio miniatures. If you don't want to go into the deep down Osprey book kind of looking into historical, in inverted commas, paint schemes and colours that we used, I'm not spending any time doing that at all. I'm relying on Warlord Games as examples as something that I can copy that will be close enough. And while this looks nothing like the box art in terms of quality, in terms of an overall scheme and idea, it should be familiar, and that's what I'm going for. The final main colour is white section. I'm basing it with Carjarodon Grey first and then going in with White Star. The white would probably cover after a couple of coats over the brown anyway, but just doing a grey layer first and then putting the white afterwards just makes it so much easier. And these paints cover pretty well as it is. But at this stage you can see it's really starting to come together now. Adding a few little dots now, again, optional. Got all those paints on my wet palette, so just dipping back into them and adding a few of the basic dot style designs that again are on that box art, just to really make it pop. You don't have to do these, but again, drawing that focus to the shields is probably what stands out on the tabletop in my opinion for this kind of miniature. And sticking with the same paint range at the moment, just for fun, but it's plate armor, mithril blade, and dragon's gold. It doesn't really matter. You want a mid to bright gold, which I'm using on some of the bosses, and then 2 sort of metallic levels, one that's slightly bit duller, and then a brighter one just for a little bit of highlighting should you feel it need it. Just having one single silver colour would also work on miniatures of this scale. So I'm just working my way along, first with the golds, making sure I pick out a few bosses, not all, leaving a couple to be silver, a couple of armbands, that kind of thing. Then we get on to the silvers again, so I'm picking out the remaining bosses on the middle of the shields, and then all of those spear tips, all of those swords, including the hilts and handles and things as well. I'm not going to spend too much time painting in individual different colours for those things at this scale. It does look great, but when you've got so many to paint, it can take a long time. Again, the point of this video is to show you how you can paint these up quickly and easily. And then with that brightest metal, just going back and just putting a little touch on the end of some of the spear tips, the tops of the few helmets, there's not many, and then the top angles of some of the swords. Just using some of the Geek Gaming Scenics Ready Basing Mix. I don't know the name of this one. It was sent to me as they were releasing it for review. I can't remember what mix it is, but it's quite a light sandy mix with bits of green and grass in there, and I used it on the previous base, so I'm just using the same thing here, adding a few tufts as well, just to break up that basing a little bit. But I found that ready mix basing is really handy rather than putting sort of textured paint down, which is hard to keep off the miniatures. A nice little black rim to tidy it up afterwards, and we're done. And I think they look pretty cool, and they're not all that different to the method that I use with the skin first layers through the airbrush, and using that, and you can see them side by side here. They work very well together. Similar kinds of colours used, some of the techniques slightly different, but so many similar. The skin's obviously different, but they both work well together, and I'm not sure which I will use now for the remainder of the army. I will make my mind up. I definitely want to paint this. This is an army I want to own and have for games. Definitely excites me more. I probably won't expand past the box set, but they are pretty cool, and I may well go for the method I've used today, to be honest with you, rather than building up with the skin, because I still had to glaze back that skin afterwards, trying to jog my memory from the way I did it from that original video. But there's techniques that will work across both of them. I probably will, for the army, eventually go back and do some more highlighting on the hair like I did in the original video, which I didn't for this. But with so much to paint and so many projects and so many game systems to play, using the method I did today is maybe the way to go. And as I said, focus on those shields a little bit more. You also only have to focus on that front rank of shields, and maybe the one on the flank on each side. The rest of them you could just do a flat colour. They're in the shadows, they're not really going to show up. But anyway, if any of you pick this up, I know it's been out for a couple of weeks now, any of you working on this set, let me know what you think of the paint method I've used today, and would you like to see a tutorial for the chariot and see how I cover that. I don't know if I'm going to do tutorials for everything else, but I thought the chariot would be a fun one, so do let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to see. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Maybe you're thinking about picking up this set yourself, and this video has helped you decide whether it's the right one for you. Or maybe you've already purchased it and you've got it sat there waiting, and you're thinking about how to paint it, and you're going to go and check out the other painting tutorial I've already done, and look at what I've done with painting, what I've shown in the video today as well, to give you some extra ideas. If you are new to the channel, there's a lot of Warlord Games Epic Battles content on there. Not all Hail Caesar, loads of Napoleonic, loads of American Civil War as well, but a lot of the techniques and things I use in those videos for hobby and painting and modelling are very, very transferable for working in this scale. If you're used to bigger scales and this is the first time you moved on to smaller miniatures. Saying that, there's loads of painting tutorials for lots of other stuff and loads of other discussions and things as well. So please do check out the whole range of videos on the channel if you haven't already. If you want to support me, give this video a like, drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps. If you'd really like to support me a lot further, please check out the link in the video description for my Patreon. It really is the best way to support the channel, and check out all my other links as well for my affiliates. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.